Your person couldn't sleep last night because they were thinking about you and made an important decision about their relationship with. Last night, as the world lay cloaked in darkness and silence, your person was wide awake, trapped in a restless storm of thoughts and emotions. Every hour that passed without sleep was filled with the weight of a secret burden, the truth they have hidden for far too long. Their mind kept returning to you, the space between your heart stretching like an unhealed wound, refusing to close. The shadows of doubt and regret crept deeper, gnawing at their soul with an intensity they could no longer ignore. God says, the night is no longer a refuge for lies. The moon trembled behind torn clouds as your person faced a spiritual reckoning in the silence. Their thoughts were a battlefield, torn between past mistakes and a future that called for courage, honesty, and painful truths. A divine presence surrounded them, watching, waiting for the moment they would choose to break free from the chains that held them captive. It was in those dark, sleepless hours that a decision was forged, a decision with the power to shift destinies and reshape the course of your relationship forever. Archangel Michael's sword hovered close, a silent reminder that what happens next is more than human will. It is a divine mandate. Last night was not just another night of tossing and turning. It was a turning point. Your person was caught between worlds, the past that imprisoned them and the future that awaits if they dare to return to the love that has never truly left their heart. This is the moment your life begins to change. The choice has been made. And the heavens are waiting. You must not ignore what follows. The room was dark, but sleep never came. Your person stared at the ceiling in silence as the weight of 1,000 unspoken words crushed their chest. The night wrapped around them like a shroud, suffocating in its silence, but it was your memory that made it impossible to breathe. Their soul trembled beneath the surface, replaying moments of your laughter, your pain, your stillness when you walked away. Every second ticked by like a blade scraping their conscience, carving out the truth they've long tried to bury. The sheets tangled around their legs like chains, each thread a memory of what they once held and destroyed. They tried to turn away from it. Tried to sleep. Tried to convince themselves that the decision they made, choosing the other person, letting distance grow between you, was justified. But tonight, that lie crumbled. Because something broke in the air the moment the clock struck 1:11 a.m. God says, this was the hour I touched their heart with holy fire. This was not just regret, they felt your heartbreak echo in their bones, felt your silence scream louder than any storm they've ever walked through. It was divine confrontation, and heaven was no longer willing to let them run. Tears welled in their eyes, not because they missed you, but because they realized how deeply they wounded you. And the ache in their chest wasn't just from longing, it was from conviction. God pierced the veil of pride that covered them, and now their spirit was unraveling like thread pulled loose in a violent wind. In the darkness, they sat up in bed, holding their head, whispering your name without sound. Outside, The moon trembled behind torn clouds, its light flickering in the window like a pulse. They felt like they were dying. Not physically, but spiritually. Because the person they used to be could not survive the weight of your pain anymore. And then the phone lit up. A message. One they didn't expect. A name they tried to avoid. A reminder of the third party still entangled in their life, a connection born out of confusion, not truth. The name alone made their chest tighten, because that person was no longer a partner, but a barrier between their soul and yours. God says, they have come to the edge. And what happens next will shift both of your futures forever. The air in the room turned heavy. They felt watched. Not by a person, but by something divine. A presence so holy, so intense, that they couldn't ignore it anymore. It was not sleep they needed, it was release. It was confession. And it was about to begin. The message on their phone wasn't long, but it hit like thunder in their bloodstream. Just 5 words from the other person: we need to talk now. It wasn't love in that sentence. It wasn't worry. It was fear. It was control. It was the thread of manipulation finally snapping loose. Your person didn't respond immediately. They sat there, frozen, staring at the glowing screen as if it carried a curse. Because deep in their gut, they knew something had shifted in the spirit realm. What once seemed tolerable, even comforting, had become suffocating and dark. The illusion was breaking. The mask of the other person had slipped. God says, the truth can only hide for so long before heaven demands it be revealed. And tonight, that revelation started with a conversation neither of them could avoid. They stepped outside into the cold night air, clutching the phone like a confession. Every breath formed clouds in the air, but it wasn't the weather that made them shiver. It was what they were about to say. The call connected, and the voice on the other end was already trembling. What happened last night? The third party asked. Your person's heart nearly stopped. Because last night, they saw you. Not physically, but spiritually. They saw your face in a dream so vivid it felt more real than anything they were living. You didn't speak, but your eyes did. You didn't cry, but your pain poured from the vision like a storm from heaven. And they woke up shaking, knowing they couldn't continue in this lie anymore. I can't do this, your person finally said, their voice low and hoarse. Something happened. I need to be honest. Silence on the other end. And then a dangerous whisper, you were with them, weren't you? They didn't answer. They didn't have to. The truth was already bleeding through the line. The third party's tone shifted, accusation turned to desperation, desperation into venom. But your person wasn't moved. Because for the first time in months, they were seeing clearly. That relationship wasn't love. It was punishment. It was escape from accountability. But it could never substitute the soul bond they shared with you. The other person began to shout, slinging every manipulative weapon they had. You'll regret this. You'll lose everything. You think they'll take you back? After what you did? But even their voice began to crack, because deep down, they knew. The power they once held was slipping like sand through shaking fingers. Archangel Michael says, "The snake is hissing louder now because it knows the sword is near." And that's exactly what happened next. A sound behind your person, like wings brushing against stone. The streetlight flickered. The air around them turned golden, charged with divine voltage. Archangel Michael stood in silence across the street, unseen by the world, but undeniable in the spirit. His sword was drawn. His face fierce. His command clear. Choose now. No more in between. The call ended. Your person didn't need more time. The decision was no longer emotional, it was divine. The lie had lasted long enough. The person they were pretending to love was no longer just a mistake, they had become a spiritual obstacle to your ordained connection. And tonight, the separation began. The whisper your person once ignored became thunder in their chest. Return to the one who carried your soul when you couldn't carry your own. The moment the call ended, the atmosphere thickened like a storm cloud descending just above your person's shoulders. The phone fell to the ground as their knees gave out under the weight of spiritual reckoning. That's when the golden light intensified, not from a lamp, not from the moon, but from the very air, the glow of something heavenly drawing near. Archangel Michael says, "Enough is enough." His voice didn't sound like thunder, it was thunder. It cracked across the night, invisible to the human ear but echoing like fire inside your person's soul. His wings stretched behind him like the edge of eternity, brushing against the rooflines, causing the very trees to tremble. There was no room left for confusion. No room for excuses. This was divine confrontation. Your person couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't even cry. They felt seen in a way no human had ever seen them. Michael's eyes didn't just look at them, they looked through them. Every lie, every delay, every time they ignored the ache of missing you, it was all laid bare. And yet, there was no condemnation, only truth. Raw, unfiltered, divine truth that pierced deeper than any blade. God says, "You were not created for counterfeits." Your soul knows the voice of the one I truly called for you, and that voice is still whispering your name in the quiet hours. Michael pointed his sword toward the horizon, and what your person saw made their entire body shake. A vision opened in the air, clearer than glass, showing two futures side by side. In one path, they stayed where they were. Their soul rotted slowly in the arms of the wrong person. success withered. Light dimmed. Love decayed until only numbness remained. In the other path, they came back to you. Not in pride. Not in romance. But in surrender. With wounds. With truth. With repentance. And in that path, heaven smiled. Peace returned. Purpose awakened. The very color of their life was restored. And Archangel Michael said, "Choose." There was no countdown. No bargaining. The time was now. And though your person still carried fear, shame, and uncertainty, they stepped into the light of the second vision. That step alone cracked something open in the spiritual realm. Lightning did not strike. But a wind swept through the street like a sigh from heaven, pulling every lying voice into silence. The third party, wherever they were, felt it. A severing. A collapse. A divine disconnection that no text, no threat, no apology could reverse. Your person fell to their knees. The street was silent. But the sky had spoken. God says, "Tonight, I have released them from a soul tie that was never born from me." The decision was made. The chains were broken. The countdown to their return had begun. They didn't know how they would explain it all to you. They didn't know if you would ever accept them again. But that no longer stopped them. Because Archangel Michael had made it clear, if they stayed in that false connection one more day, they would lose not just love, but their own divine alignment. Now they were awakened. Marked. Set apart again. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but it would be holy. The first light of dawn was still hidden, but your person's heart had already risen, heavy with a new resolve. The night's battle, the fight between shadow and truth, left no room for turning back. They knew that whatever steps they took now would carve a path through the fabric of their destiny, irreversible and raw. Their mind replayed the scenes, the broken promises whispered in darkness, the cold distance that grew like a silent cancer, the silent prayers they never dared to send to you. But God says, redemption is not bound by the past, but by the courage to face it. And your person found that courage bleeding through their soul. They rose from the knees where Archangel Michael's presence had held them. Their breath was shallow, their hands trembling, but their spirit was ignited by a fierce flame, a divine fire burning away doubt, pride, and fear. The weight of the third party's threats no longer shackled them. They had chosen the path of truth, no matter the cost.